So I hope you made some new connections and you have some new business cards and some folks you can follow up with. So as we talk about the Greater Hudson area growth and development, we have 4 speakers joining us this morning. I will read each of their brief bios. They will make a few opening comments. I have a couple set questions for them to respond to, and then we will open it up to the floor. So I'm not going in any particular order, but Aaron Reeves. Aaron is the Hudson City new administrator. He has almost 25 years experience of city government, and mostly in Minnesota. We're so glad that he saw the light and crossed the state line. And most recently, he was city administrator in Cloquet, Minnesota. He's been married to his wife, Paige, for 25 years, and they have 2 children. And he's excited to be in Hudson and looking forward to working with the chamber to help all of our local businesses be successful. Joining us also today is Mike Johnson. He is the Community Development Director for the City of Hudson. In this capacity, he oversees the city's planning and zoning, building inspections, economic development, engineering, property assessment, and serves as acting secretary to the St. Croix Business Park Corporation. And before joining the City of Hudson in 2017, he was executive director of Greene County Development Corporation, where he oversaw the county economic development efforts in Greene County, Wisconsin. He grew up in Hudson and is a high school graduate. Congratulations, Mike. That is great. We love to have the hometown people here. He's married to his wife, Audrey, who is a teacher at St. Patrick's School, and they have 2 young children, Henry and Andrew. Mike MROZ became the city's Director of Public Works and Parks in August of 2018. He brought to the city more than 14 years of extensive experience and increasing levels of responsibility in municipal public works. As Director of Public Works and Parks, he is responsible for creating and implementing the public works, parks, stormwater utility budgets, along with overseeing the operations and maintenance of the city's streets, parks, urban forest, and stormwater infrastructure. Prior to joining us here in Hudson, he was the Public Works Operation Manager for the City of New Richmond, and then also was Parks Superintendent for the City of Wabasha, Minnesota. And he joins us with his bachelor's in kinesiology from the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire and his master's in recreation management from UW-La Crosse. And when not at work all the time, he enjoys spending time with his family and 4 children. And then Patrick MOOS. He is the Public Works Director at the Village of North Hudson for the last 4 years. Prior to his current position, he worked in western northern Dakota and eastern Montana for Halberton. Did I say that right? Halberton Energy Services as a regional safety supervisor. And he has also worked in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area drilling municipal water wells. And then prior to that, he was on the highway paving crew in North Dakota and South Dakota. So please join me in welcoming all of our speakers today. So I'm going to invite each of you to give a 2 to 3 minute introduction. I don't know, should we start with you, Aaron, and then we'll just go. All right.
So we kind of touched on the bio part, but I've only been with the city about 2 months, roughly, so I won't have a whole lot to contribute here versus the others. But I'll answer kind of what I can and kind of what I've seen so far and those sort of things. So, but it's been great so far. The Hudson community is wonderful. When we were looking at relocating, we looked at a number of different cities, and one of the reasons we chose Hudson because it is a community with the downtown and things like that. And everyone we talked to really enjoyed being here, whether it was business owners downtown or just people we met at restaurants and things. People really like Hudson. They like the area. They think it's a great community to live in. So we're very excited to be here with that. And then as far as the city goes, it's been kind of a hit the ground running sort of start. We just adopted our budget last night at last night's council meeting. So basically my first 2 months were pretty much just working through the budget and trying to get those things worked out with our department heads and with the council. So it was a kind of a good start for me to get a better handle on where the city's at kind of financially, where the community's at growth wise, things like that, which is obviously what kind of our focus is today, and then what the others here are more directly involved in or have been involved in. So it's been good so far. I'm learning every day. I'm trying to get out and meet as many people as I can, whether business owners, citizens, things like that. So I would encourage you, if you have any questions, issues, things like that, my door is always open. Give me a call, email, stop in at City Hall. I'm happy to talk to anyone. I'm always interested to hear what's going on in the community. My prior roles have been pretty much focused on development work. So I have a lot of experience in kind of municipal growth. I was with the city of Rochester as they kind of started really moving from some nice stable growth to some crazy growth in a real short period of time. A lot of that was revolved around density, so large scale apartment complexes, condos, things like that. A lot of things that we're starting to see come here in Hudson right now. Actually, a lot of the same developers I've worked with before are also going to be working here in the community as well as we kind of move forward. So it's good for me to have some of the background with some of not only the groups involved, but just the experience in the process as a community tries to transition away from almost all single family development to a different sort of development with density and things like that. So it should be an interesting process for everyone. It's going to be a process for us as staff to go through, and it's for our council as elected officials. So to help with that, we are going through our comprehensive plan update right now. We do need input from everyone. We are going to see changes in the community, and we need the input from our citizens and our business owners about how you want to see that change occur. And so we're looking forward to that as we kind of kick off that process for the comp plan. So I guess with that, we'll pass it on to the next person.
All right. Mike?
Oh, sorry.
I can take off the podium.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks, Nate. I missed that part.
So I graduated high school. Yeah, no.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to be clear.
So again, I'm born and raised in Hudson. Graduated from high school here in 2003. This was a dream of mine to come back and serve the community that I grew up in. I came at an interesting time following somebody that was here, Denny Darnold, who unfortunately obviously is no longer with us, but was here for 31 years. They always say don't follow the guy that was the guy. Well, I'm that guy that followed that guy. So, we're coming into a period right now, and we have been at least in my tenure, my short 2.5 years thus far, as Aaron kind of alluded to, is a lot of growth and a lot of things coming at us all at once. Times are good economically. We've got a lot of development pressure. We're working through a lot of really big, heady issues that are going to take up a lot of our time, a lot of our council's time, staff. And I think, I really want to touch on what Aaron was talking about, and that's our comp plan. I know we're going to have some more discussion on it here shortly, but that's an opportunity that only comes once every 10 or so years. So we're mandated by the state of Wisconsin to update our comprehensive plan. It is our global vision, much like a business has a strategic plan, organizations have strategic plans, communities have comprehensive plans, which directs growth, development, transportation, what we want our community to look like in the next 20, 30 years. So we'll get into it a little bit more, but that's kind of the most exciting work that I think we're starting to go into now that we've started. I'll throw the first grenade out there. We transitioned into the new parking system. This is now my next.
Oh, boy.
Hey, we'll start. I know, but it's not. We're going to avoid it the whole morning. So, so that's our next big project that myself and my staff are working on. We have an open house this Thursday, actually, at EP Rock School at 6 p.m. Invite everybody to attend. It's going to be a good opportunity to kind of share what your thoughts are. We have surveys out there. And again, I'll share more. Also, I think another thing kind of going into with the growth and development is last night the council approved a moratorium on annexation. So annexing new territory into the city. The impetus for that is not necessarily to say we don't want growth. The thought is we need to alleviate a lot of our issues on Carmichael Road. We know that it's kind of reached a critical mass. We know something needs to be done. We need the state to help at least commit to getting something on their timeline. Everybody thought we're going to redo Exit 2 in 2025. Well, that's not happening. We're not on their schedule yet. So that's one of the big things is we need to work with the state, the county, the town, make sure that we have that plan in place. So with that, I'll turn it over to the next.
All right, thank you.
All right, is that good?
That's perfect. I apologize.
Oh, no, I'm fine.
All right. Who wants to go next? Michael.
Save the best to last, right, Patrick?
Yes.
What's that? Well, good morning. My name is Michael MROZ, and I took over for another kind of staple of the community. Mr. Tom Zuley was my predecessor. He worked for the city of Hudson for, 40 years. So I'm taking over for the guy as well. I'm that guy too. So Mike and I are in it together. Our offices are right next to each other. We'd have constant conversations about that. But anyways, I just want to kind of compound on what Mike had said about growth, right? So he brings the businesses in, the growth, the development, so on and so forth, and then it's kind of my responsibility to make sure that the infrastructure is keeping up with the growth. And right now we're kind of lacking, right? We know about Carmichael, our wastewater treatment facility. Kip Peters is the director of the utility there. They're going through a update on their facility here this upcoming summer, which will get us to the plant will be sufficient for up till 2040. Or 25,000 people, whichever one gets first, before we start thinking about satellite plants, so on and so forth. So there's constantly looking for opportunities to update the infrastructure, constantly applying for grants. We have a grant out right now for Carmichael Road build-out with the STP Urban Grant. That's about a $12 to $14 million project. Also looking at grants to expand the 11th Street Bridge to help alleviate some of the congestion there. Grants for continued trail access. That's one of the big things I hear about is safe routes to schools, walking trails, so on and so forth. So, my job is to make sure that, the staffing levels stay up, that we're getting the streets plowed, that the water's running where it's supposed to run, so on and so forth. So it's a challenge at times because the city is growing so fast and it's hard to kind of keep up. But we're trying hard to convince the council, our committees, and the community to help support kind of what's going on. So with that being said, I'll turn it over to Patrick. So thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, I'm Patrick. I work Director of Public Works for the Village of North Hudson. The Village of North Hudson's a small community. That's kind of what drew me there. I grew up in a small town in North Dakota. We've lived here for 20 years now. My predecessor, I think, was 21 years, something like that. So definitely a staple. So there's always growing pains with maybe not doing things the exact same way as everybody else, or as the person before me, I should say. But even though we are a small community, North Hudson is still growing. We have a new development, Abbey Grove development, and then of course the Quick Trip, and our Ridges at the end of 10th is also, they're expanding, putting some new homes up there. So even though we don't have a whole lot of room, seems like we're really expanding. People are doing a lot of developing and things like that. So again, we're trying to keep up with why is the water in my front yard and what have you. So we're trying to do our best, and that's all we can do. So, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So just a couple questions that we have prepared here. So St. Croix County continues to be the fastest growing county in Wisconsin. Is there anything on the horizon that the business community should be aware of? Mr. Johnson, did you want to take that one? Okay. Mr. Johnson?
Jeez.
Just a brief response.
No.
Okay, you saw these questions before this morning. These were sent out to them. I'm just covering myself.
I said high school education.
Right? Exactly. Thanks, Hudson.
Brief response.
I think I alluded to some of the, I think every introduction kind of talked about it, right? Is our community is growing so fast and trying to keep up with that. And I think that impacts not only, the infrastructure, but also impacts the business community in that, whether you're having workforce issues, transportation issues, again, questions that are coming up. We feel those, we see those, the housing, shortages, all different types of housing, workforce, affordability means something different to everybody. Those are all things that I think we'll talk about a little bit more. The moratorium, that's something, again, we're not trying to stop growth. We're just trying to make sure that we can accommodate it. But those are the big things that I think the business community needs to be aware of.
And I think it's also part of it just that development pressure is coming. It's a different sort of development, I think, than what we're used to seeing. So just understand that the council and the staff, we're here to listen about that too. I mean, there's a process for everything. So you're not just going to see a building get thrown up somewhere and you're saying, whoa, what's this? Where did it come from? I mean, we will go through a very public process through all of it to help guide that. So, you know, it'll be different, but we're going to take the input. The council is going to take the input before they make any final decisions. So just remember that you can weigh in. You can contact your council members. You can contact staff. Let them know that, you know, this stuff's happening. We're going to try to be as public about it and open about it as possible to get the input we can. But you gotta participate in it, and so you can, you know, kind of stay involved. And we'll do a weekend on our part to make sure we get the information out there the best we can.
Maybe the neighborhood development meetings.
Yeah, one of the things we've talked about is something that I've had experience with in kind of a faster growing area is neighborhood development meetings. So one of the things that we're implementing, the council actually just approved it last night, is that before a developer can come in with even their preliminary plan application to the city, they have to first have a neighborhood development meeting. So it's on their own. They have to set up a meeting with the neighbors at a location where they can present what their project is, gain input from the neighbors about the project, hear their concerns, things like that. Once they do that, it gives that developer at least a chance to modify their plans and to take into account neighborhood concerns before coming to the city. Because a lot of times what happens is they show up in front of the planning commission or the council and the neighbors are up with all these concerns, and you end up sitting in a meeting having a developer and the neighbors kind of negotiating some things, and we don't want to see that. We'd rather see that the developer and the neighborhood have a good relationship going into the project, so that when it shows up in front of the planning commission and council, yes, you may still have some concerns and objections and things, but at least hopefully the developer has shown that they're willing to take into account the neighborhood issues and try to factor that into their project, so we can try to head off these sort of things that you see sometimes where you have some negotiations happening on the fly, which we want to try to avoid.
All right, I'm going to turn to this side of the room. All right, so the Highway 35 project in 2021, we know that's a ways out, but, you know, based on some disruption that it could cause, we want to be sure we're talking about it now. From your point of view, what do the businesses, residents need to do to get prepared and ready? And are there communities that have gone through similar type projects, something like this, that could help us prepare? Is everyone aware of the Highway 35 project in 2021?
No.
Okay, so
Okay.
briefly.
Yep, I'll briefly kind of go over it. So the Highway 35 project in 2021 is a state-led reconstruction project. It is basically starting from the wastewater treatment facility on the south side of Hudson, and it goes all the way through to basically where the Quick Trip was just being built in the village of North Hudson. So it's a very extensive project led by the state, and it's kind of broken up into 5 separate pieces. So the first piece is, you know, when people say reconstruct, I mean, it's, I'll go through the steps. It's just easier to go through the steps. So there's going to be like joint repair down by the wastewater treatment facility. Really no impact on traffic. They're going to kind of alternate lanes, so on and so forth, so we're still able to get through the downtown area. It's going to be a mill and overlay part of the process. They're also going to be updating the pedestrian ramps to meet ADA standards. The city of Hudson is going to be redoing some of the lighting down there, kind of combining the overhead street lights and a decorative into one. You know, and then so that's the mill and overlay portion. And then from Vine Street to the north, that's when the complete reconstruct starts. So that's going to be your water lines, your sewer lines, your storm sewer, ripping up the curb. So it is going to be an inconvenience, and we know that. The state's aware of that. We've had one public engagement meeting with the public. We're going to have a second one coming up here shortly. And I believe the state sends out letters to all the people that live along Highway 35. But the original proposal was to completely shut down the Lake Malibu Bridge and then reroute traffic all the way out to UUA, up and around, come back down. Well, of course, that's not feasible because it's such an important access. So the state heard that, and what they're going to do is they're going to set up temporary signals over the bridge so that for a majority of the project, people will still be able to get to the village of North Hudson, so on and so forth. There is going to be delays. There is going to be cars backed up. You know, people are going to find alternate routes coming from Minnesota, coming down instead of coming through North Hudson or coming through Hudson. So I mean, that's kind of the gist of the project. It is going to be a big project. It's going to be a headache. Like I said, the downtown area, you know, the mill and overlay portion of the project is probably a 3-week part of the project. it's not going to be completely shut down. There'll be traffic going through downtown at all times. You know, the designated detour route, it actually comes through downtown out on Vine to the east. So, like I said, if you have any questions about it, feel free to get in touch with me. I'm in contact with the state quite often about the project, and they're constantly updating the plans and scheduling and so on and so forth. We talked with the chamber about trying to stay away from some of the larger community events, as far as like Hudson Boosters, Riverfest, so on and so forth, so that there's not main construction going in the downtown area during those times, and try to help alleviate with some of the congestion too. So that's about it. Patrick, anything to
Patrick, do you
add?
want to add on to that for the North Hudson side?
Yeah, basically our North Hudson, what we're having done is the total reconstruct, so everything will be tore up, the water, sanitary sewer, and storm sewer, curb, and there'll be some sections of sidewalk that'll be taken out. My best advice would be to find alternate routes through. I mean, please come and visit our establishments, but coming in from the north would be much easier. It'll be tough. I know they're going to do it a section at a time. They're going to try to keep everyone access as far as homeowners, because we do have quite a few homes on the main drag. So I know the state has reassured us that they'll do their best to let everybody have access.
Right.
It'll
Timeline on the project?
It's supposed to be completed in one season, one construction season. So it'll start, May, something like that.
It'll probably start
April, and then they'll be finished by fall. So it's pretty aggressive.
And I think we've talked about in the downtown, the area, that there will always be two-way traffic, but there just won't be parking
Correct.
right on the main street.
Correct. Yep.
All right. So let's see. We've touched on the comprehensive plan a little bit, but as you said, it's required for the state to do that every 10 years. You've talked about how people can be involved because you're going to have community meetings and so forth, so we invite that participation. But are there any 2 or 3 major issues that this plan is trying to address?
Public participation first and foremost. I think the plan is only going to be as good as the input that we receive from not only the business community but our residents and visitors. So there is a project website. You can go to www.hudsonComprehensiveplan.com, and that'll be constantly updated with all the events and things that are going on with the plan. All of our open houses. Again, this plan will be very, very public input heavy. I think it was an area that was lacking a little bit in our 2009 comprehensive plan, which has led to some of our more recent growing pains. So we want to make sure that we have a lot of input. And in terms of the areas that it needs to cover, I think the ones that are of most interest to this group, and I think to the community as a whole, are the housing component, transportation, and then future land use. So future land use dictates, okay, where are we going to grow? You know, what areas is the city going to expand into? And then ultimately, what types of land uses would occur there? So land use and zoning are separate things, but land use is a more broad term that can tell you, okay, are we talking about low density housing here, high density, medium density? Are we talking about general commercial, neighborhood commercial? Any different, public uses, things like that. So those would be the 3 main areas. We'll also hit areas like economic development, natural resources, and those will be the main thrust of the plan this time.
All right, I have one more.
Thanks. So there's also a survey that's available. We're actually using an online survey provider called Polko. It's linked to the website that I gave. Again, that's HudsonComprehensiveplan.com. You can go on to Polko, or you can go onto that website, click the Take the Survey button, and it's all right there in front of you. Encourage you to do that. We also have hard copy surveys available at City Hall, the Utility Department, and at the library.
All right.
This might be a silly question, but is this plan just for the city of Hudson, or is it a comprehensive village, township, area of Hudson plan?
Just the city, but we will talk about areas that the city could expand into. So it's specific to the city for our purposes. The county has a comprehensive plan. The village has a comprehensive plan. We all have our own processes, and then we engage. We have relationships with our neighboring jurisdictions to talk about how our plans should dovetail in with theirs.
All right, I have one more question, and then I open it up to the floor to the questions. So just with the need for workers in this community, we know housing and transportation are part of the challenge to fill those positions. How can the business community partner with you on these issues? Okay.
Well,
I can do it. I got the dry mouth now.
All right, I'll do a little bit with this one then. So I think communication is still a big part of it. So you have to keep letting us know issues. So you're having trouble transportation side. You're having trouble getting your workers here from wherever they're coming from. Let us know that. Let us know those kind of details. The housing side, again, you're having workers that want to live in the community but can't. The more you can provide us with the actual details about that, your business, and we've got this issue, that issue. It's easier for us then to take that not only to our council if we're having conversations about this, but also to the state as well, or our regional partners, the county, things like that, to talk about, okay, so we have identified X number of businesses in the community that are bringing in employees from Minnesota, but they're having issues getting here. So what can we do as a county, as a region, to help address that through some sort of transit system, shuttling, something like that. Same with the housing side. The more we can show that here's what our needs are, here's what our employers are having issues getting and retaining and good workers because they have nowhere to live. That stuff helps us, so then we can go to, say, the state, apply for funding to help and things like that, because a lot of these things the city can't do it alone. We can't do our own transit system that serves outside the community and everywhere else. We have to partner with others to do something like that. Same with the affordable housing side. The only thing we can do is put money towards it, really. But we need to partner with the state and partner with other programs to really make it successful. So we need to kind of know the stories and things like that really helps us. And also we may be looking at partnerships. A lot of the successful ways that communities address transit and affordable housing is that they partner with their business community. That the business community may provide financial assistance to help towards things like affordable housing. They also may become partners in the transit part, where we have guaranteed stops at certain businesses for certain times and things like that. So there's also the opportunity for partnership as this develops. So it's more that communication part, I think, is going to be the most helpful, is keep us in the loop about your concerns, but at the same time recognize that we may be coming back to you to look at some partnership opportunities to address the issue, because we can't do it alone.
All right, thank you. So now we open up the floor, and please let me know if you have a question directed to a particular person, if you're looking for all. I think I saw a hand go right up here.
So, can you give us an update where we're at with public transportation? I know we need to voice our concerns, and we have voiced them, I think, for the last 4 or 5 years now. So I just was looking for an update if you have one available.
So we are in the process with the Western Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission of expanding potentially our ADRC program, our transit system for the Disability Resource Center at the county. So we're looking at creating some type of transportation or transit system between River Falls, Hudson, and New Richmond. So that should be completed probably by the new year. I think that was the hope on that study. I think, again, going back to the comp plan, getting an idea of making that a priority, because our last plan didn't, quite frankly, make public transit or any types of transportation alternatives a priority. I think, having come from a rural community, at my last where I was previously to Hudson, that was a situation where Monroe is a good hour out of Madison south, right? And you had some very large employers like Colony Brands. So, down there, the county was able to partner with some of the larger and the cheese factories that are kind of scattered around the rural countryside. They worked together where, they kind of they built their own transit system privately that the counties and the cities and villages, help support, just like kind of Aaron talked about. But we certainly hear it quite often, and it's certainly a priority, like I said, as we go through our comprehensive plan process.
And then the county has also now created a transit committee, basically. So they're actually looking at it county-wide. So the city's going to be going in front of that committee along with UW River Falls and some other partners to talk about, okay, so we got the committee now, we're all willing to be partners here, what's kind of the next step for implementation? And then also I know that the mayors of our communities in this area are getting together to talk about, okay, so we have heard from our local businesses that they need something to get people over from the Minnesota side. What's something that we could possibly do as a joint effort between our multiple communities to make that happen? So that meeting is also happening here a couple weeks actually with the mayors to kind of talk about some options there. And so the steps are kind of starting to be taken, but it'll be a little bit of a process because we don't have anything in place right now. So it's going to take a little bit of work. But the good part is that the planning has finally started, I think, to really see some of that stuff get implemented, hopefully not too far out.
All right, Steve and then Buck. Steve?
Hudson has two north-south arterials in Carmichael and Main Street. What is in the plan for next summer on Vine and Carmichael to ready ourselves for Main Street's construction in '21? Given the high density that's going into the Carmichael 40-acre, that's going to start to build out in that same timeline. So it feels like a perfect storm coming. Mike's, let's say.
It's a great opportunity, Steve. Okay.
It is a great opportunity.
Yeah. I guess I'll start, and then Mike, you can jump on if I'm missing something. So I know as part of the development at the 40-acre parcel that you're talking about, as part of the development, Mike wrote in that the developer has to put in $1.4 million worth of public infrastructure improvements, and those infrastructure improvements will go towards kind of expanding the intersection, realigning some of the roads, making the right-hand turn lanes in the development longer, so on and so forth, so that we're able to handle some of that more capacity that's going to be coming online. So there's also an off-street trail that's a part of that project, off-street trail that goes through the development itself, sidewalks, so on and so forth. So, I mean, we're very aware of the pressure that's going to create at that intersection. We already know it's already a mess up there, right? And to put that in there next to it's going to be even worse. So, like I said, we're very aware of that. We were very conscious of that when Mike was developing that agreement to make sure that the improvements were in place prior to the 2021 project and the full build out of that development. So, on top of that, I did allude to this earlier. You know, the city has applied for that STP urban grant for a full build out of Carmichael. So that would go from basically Cooley by the Target all the way up to the middle school, right? 4-lane, basically a continuation of what's south of the interchange would continue all the way through, which would allow for, you know, turn lanes, another traffic signal to help alleviate some of that, so people aren't having to try and, you know, wait to turn out of Culver's out to Hillcrest for 3 minutes, right? So the city, like I said, is very, very aware of that. We're trying to get grant funding to help support, because it is like I said, it is a very, very big project that the city can't do on its own. You know, like
We started, and to kind of piggyback on that, particular to Vine Street, at Public Works Committee on December 9th, we'll be presenting, or our engineers will be presenting, some of the design concepts for pedestrian safety and vehicle traffic safety that would need to occur as these developments happen as well. So again, December 9th, we'll be presenting what those options are. I think the big thing for me, having grown up here and knowing how bad that Vine and Carmichael intersection has been forever, is that with this initial interim improvement that the developer is responsible for, that I guess that Carmichael north of Vine is going to be widened, and you'll actually have dedicated right-hand turns through and left-hand turns. So, you know, because currently if someone's trying to take a left and you're trying to go straight, it backs everything up. So that'll be expanded, so you'll have dedicated turn lanes. And you won't have that weird jog if you're driving north and you're going 45 and you're crossing Vine, you have to kind of do a quick jog to the west as you continue north towards the government center, and that'll straighten that all out, so the lanes will all be aligned, so you won't have to deal with that anymore.
All right, Buck, you had a question.
Yeah, I've got a sales tax question for Aaron and for Mike Johnson. The sales tax revenue is a big piece of the county's budget, and retail sales in Hudson account for a significant part of that sales tax. as we're doing our county budget this fall, I predicted there is no reason to expect the growth curve of our sales tax to have any hiccup. You gentlemen assure me that was a good prediction?
All right then.
Yeah, we sort of promise. We think it's going to be another good year, so we're hoping for the same thing.
Okay, there you go, Buck. All right. Yes, Fred.
Hi, I'm Fred Dietz with the Kiwanis Club. One of our partner organizations is the U.S. Army Recruiting and Career Center here in Hudson. Those recruiters get a very nice housing allowance to live in a civilian community. They can't afford Hudson, or they can't find anything available in Hudson. They're living in River Falls, New Richmond. And I know affordable housing is a hot button for a lot of people, and I'm not saying affordable housing. But there's got to be something in your comprehensive plan to address that.
Absolutely.
So part of that, if I just can add on, a lot of times we talk about it in terms of workforce housing, in terms of that if you are a server, if you're a teacher, if you're a police officer, you should be able to live and work in the community that you serve in. So I know that is a hot button that will be a part of the plan moving forward.
It's a large topic and has a number of variables and things that need to be discussed. I think a lot of what we're doing too is you have to have product mix too. And something that we haven't quite frankly had in the past in Hudson is larger scale, and we've talked about it briefly today, is talking about higher densities and apartments, quite frankly. That's not a product that Hudson has traditionally had. So, kind of the hope is as we provide different types and product out there that you create some turnover or churn in our existing housing market to open up hopefully some of those starter homes, things like that. It's hard for a developer right now to come in and build a $250,000 house. It just is. Or a $200,000 house with construction costs the way they are and land prices the way they are. It's just the reality of the environment that we're in. So I think part of the conversation needs to expand in, okay, how do we provide more housing types to create and free up some of that inventory that could be reinvested in by, maybe somebody, a young professional or somebody like you, a military family, someone like that, as well as providing those, coming out of college, where do we live? In apartments, right? And then you kind of go into renting a house, and then you buy a house, and, it's kind of a natural transition in life. And I think, one of the things that I worry about the most in Hudson is the fact that not only can you not start young and grow, I see a lot of fear from our aging population is how can you age in the community that you live? And how can we keep those seniors in a place? There's some insecurity, some housing insecurity in terms of I have nowhere to go other than my single family house that I've lived in for 50 years. How do we have product available to people that's affordable, that they can transition and have access and enjoy the same amenities and be a part of the community that they've given so much to, in their time living here. So that's part of the larger discussion too.
Yeah, I think with workforce housing, it's a problem in any fast-growing community. And honestly, as with anything, the market drives the housing. And like Mike said, you can't get a developer to build a $250,000 house right now with the costs involved. It's just the land value and things like that in a fast-growing community makes it too hard. So the only way you get that is either through allowing more density, which is the apartments and things that we haven't seen before, where that way a developer can still make the same return that they need to make to be successful on a smaller piece of land, or the government has to subsidize it. If you want to see more like single-family, affordable things like that, the only way you get that is to help the developer get to their percentage they need to, and that means the city has to somehow help with those costs involved. That's really the only way you can get to that. So in an area like this right now, what we're focusing on really is that density part. It doesn't mean that if a developer came forward with some sort of single-family, affordable proposal, that the city would not take a look at that and see how can we assist to get to the numbers where it makes sense. But honestly, most of the developers now aren't looking at that. They could take that same piece of land and sell houses for 2 to 3 times as much, and really hit their percentages where they want to be, and that's the market-driven part of it. But as a city, we recognize it, and that's why we're trying to take a look at how do we promote the density, but also we're not saying that we wouldn't assist with single-family developments if somebody came forward with something like that. But we want to see it as well. We need that full range of housing, and we recognize it, and we're not the only ones. I mean, clearly this is an issue across the country. That's a problem, and nobody has the magical answer, because honestly, it always comes down to money, and it's who's going to help make it work. Developers aren't opposed to it. It's just that they have to be successful, and as a developer, you build what the market's calling for, and so we have to recognize that and kind of work within those confines, and that's what we're trying to do.
All right, another question. Nate.
For Mike or Aaron, just to explain the TIF district and how it affects downtown.
Okay.
Briefly.
So the downtown tip, what tax increment districts do is effectively they set there's a value that when you enact or adopt a TIF district or a geography, in this case downtown overlay district, the values freeze. And as we do projects or as development occurs, that additional value, that increment, goes to just the city as opposed to going to the other taxing entities like the county, the tech school, the school district. So what we can do with those monies, we have a project plan and we say, okay, there's projects in the community that we need to do, right? We want to promote good economic development. We want to have job opportunities for people downtown. We want to promote just general business and opportunity. We want to do some amenity things and infrastructure work. So part of the Highway 35 plan, it calls for some more decorative things, some aesthetic pieces. Those aren't things that the city would traditionally be able to do without bonding for it and raising taxes on everybody. But the hope is by having values increase downtown, we can take that increment and put them into some of those projects that we think are a priority or that our community sees as a priority. So again, the aesthetic improvements, business development, economic development, the waterfront, we want to do a lot of improvements. Obviously, it's a problem that our boat launch is only open like 2 weeks out of the year. So we're trying to do a lot of different projects, but there's only so much money in the way that we can do it. The creative way for us to fund those projects is through a tax increment district where we have those monies that we wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, the goal is to use that money to increase the amenities downtown, the access to the river, make it more desirable so more people want to come and more people want to be downtown. So we want to turn that money around to help improve our downtown businesses and the community as a whole, really.
All right, one last question.
Maybe to parlay on that question, Aaron, coming from Minnesota, now being over in Wisconsin, and going through the budget process, how has the 1% levy limit impacted the city's budget and your ability to fulfill priorities?
I think the biggest part with all that really is that Wisconsin is so limiting as far as how cities can raise money. And it's basically our property tax levy is the only option we really have. Where coming from Minnesota, there's a very robust local government aid program where you're getting assistance from the state that's distributed out based on a whole number of criteria to make sure that your faster growing cities like we aren't seeing a huge benefit where your other parts of your state where you have much slower growth where they're really hampered. The goal of Minnesota is to try to balance out a little bit the ability for cities to be successful. Now, for us here, we're doing great because of the growth that we're having. We're able, as a staff, we're able to present a budget that includes a bunch of basically everything that I think the citizens and the businesses want to see. We're going to keep our high level of public safety and those sort of things. We're going to do what we can amenity wise to keep it a great community that people want to move to, and we're able to do that within our budget constraints because we are a faster growing community. Other cities in the state can't do it, and that really hurts them more. So for us, we're okay still because of that growth and development. Now, that all stops, all of a sudden that cap gets real hard to kind of deal with, but that's kind of the goal of it too, is that if you are a growing community, you should be able to raise your levy a little bit more to help take into account some of that growth, but you can never really do it enough, which is also why it's important when Mike is negotiating these development agreements that the developers are putting $1.2 million in to fix that interchange, not the citizens and the taxpayers of the city.
1.4.
1.4, sorry. I don't want to short them. 1.4, but that's an important part of it too, is that while growth is happening and that's good for us, but really we need to use that growth as far as making sure that we're keeping up our public safety levels and things like that to make sure it's still a community people want to stay in, they feel safe in, in, that there's the things that they want to do in. And then on the flip side of that is we have to make sure that Mike keeps making sure that the growth and the development is paying for itself as much as possible. They're paying for those infrastructure improvements so that we're all not as taxpayers here. So yes, it is very different, and it is kind of a definitely a hard cap that makes it difficult. But luckily enough, because of what Hudson's going through, we're able to weather a lot better than most communities, I think, in the state can.
State aids.
All right, one last quick question before we have fabulous drawings for prizes. All right, one back there, Cindy.
What is going on with the former dog track? I was just curious.
What is going on at St. Croix Meadows?
Well, they just started construction of Divine Custom Homes is doing the housing component. So all the roads are pretty much in to access that. Baseball, I'm still being told, is going to happen. I would hope that we don't have to wait another year or two, but the development group, the ownership group is very optimistic. Phillips Phase 1 is just about done. 1.5 is just about done, and then we're gonna start working on again getting the park ground out there. There's dedicated park ground that will go in kind of along the bluff line there, and we look at some opportunities for some active and passive recreation. We're kind of limited with the quarry up above, something that I didn't actually ever know was there growing up, but we have an active quarry just to the east of the dog track that we're going to be trying to do some, maybe some mountain bike trails, things like that. Mike and I will be working on some plans there. And then obviously I'm just as excited as anybody to see that baseball field get started.
All right, well, please join me in giving a warm thank you to Aaron, Mike, and Patrick. We appreciate all that you're doing to continue to make Hudson area a great place to live, work, visit, and do business, and we look forward to our continued partnership with you. All right, before we end today, we have an opportunity for 4 fabulous prizes. So I'm going to ask each of the gentlemen to draw a name. We all might need a fabulous Hudson golf umbrella today. Hot off the press from Engravers Connection, we have 2 fabulous Hudson Chamber portfolios that you can use to write down all the important notes that you need to take. And then I would be remiss if I didn't do one of Mike Veck's fabulous business books. So I'm going to ask each of you to draw a name out of here, and you can each read your name as you pick one. All right, let's start with Patrick.
Colin Mueller.
Colin Mueller, St. Croix Sailing School. All right, come on down. All right, Michael.
I have Robin Rivard.
Robin Rivard, Hudson Schools. Okay.
Gary Larson.
Gary Larson, you are a winner. Come on down.
Mike Kazmierski.
Mike from 360. Come on down. So you can pick one of these lovely prizes. You might need the umbrella today. I don't know. All right.
I'll take the umbrella.
All right, you'll take the umbrella. You never know.
Are you kidding? They all left this?
I know. And here you go, Carrie. Write down all your good notes.
I will, thank you.
All right. So again, thank you to Studio EA for sponsoring today's program, and we look forward to seeing you at their open house this Thursday. We have a number of great upcoming events I look forward to seeing you at. Thank you for attending as well as for your support for the Hudson Chamber. Have a great day.